The church blesses many things. The church blesses every kind of person.
Sure.
But the church can't bless unions that are not marriage, sexual unions that are not marriage, whether that be between people who are divorced and remarried and perhaps pursuing a declaration of nullity that hasn't come yet, or people who are cohabiting without marriage, or even whether that has to do with persons who are same-sex attracted but living in a sexual relationship with someone. That's not the kind of a relationship that can be regularized, that can be made a sacrament. But nonetheless, if they approach the church and ask to be blessed, what this declaration is simply specifying, in a way that's clearer than it was before, is that the church's minister can offer them a blessing.
Welcome to Tulsa Time with Bishop Konderla. My name is Derek Lyssy, and I am your host. And it's great to be back with you all. It's been some time since we've actually recorded a show. It's been a few weeks.
And you managed to not introduce yourself as Adam Minahan.
That's right. That's right. That's right. The new host of Tulsa Time. So it's good to be with you as host for the first time. We have a special guest here today with us, a gentleman by the name of Josh Funderburk, who is the newer development director for St. Philip Neri Newman Center at the University of Tulsa, one of our vibrant ministries here in the Diocese of Tulsa. So welcome, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
And of course, there might be people yet who missed the episode where we did explain that Adam Minahan has taken another position that, fortunately for all of us, allows him to remain still in town.
That's right.
And so we still have the gift of his family and his presence as a volunteer in many things. But Tulsa Time continues with a new host, and so we just continue along.
That's right. So it's great to be with you, Bishop. And there's been a lot going on in our world here of late. There's been a lot going on in the church. Things have been in the news. And
it's literally possible, and maybe even likely, that there are some people who have not heard until now that this past Monday, I guess it was, maybe Sunday, that the Vatican released a declaration from the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith titled Fiducia Supplicans. And it's a declaration that has created a huge furor on social media and in the media generally, and headlines have been all over the map, and people are saying all kinds of things about it. We're releasing a memo today, or a letter today, to the diocese, to the priests and the deacons, just trying to further explain the declaration, what it says and what it doesn't say. And I think that, once again, it's another opportunity, and we talk about this often on Tulsa Time, and when I'm out in parishes and visiting with groups, invariably I end up talking a lot about the need for us to be much more ready to read our catechism and our Bible than to be following social media and to be allowing headlines, which are incorrect almost always, to be allowing headlines to blow up our peace. Our peace is in the Lord. It's not in the headlines. And so, nonetheless, it's useful to help people to understand what a declaration like this might mean, what this one in particular means. It has to do with the pastoral desire of Pope Francis to have the church be open to everyone and to be striving to reach out to every person and a recognition that there are some limitations in some of the things the church can do. For example, with regards to blessings of people's marriages, the church, of course, blesses marriages. The church blesses many things. The church blesses every kind of person.
Sure.
But the church can't bless unions that are not marriage, sexual unions that are not marriage, whether that be between people who are divorced and remarried and perhaps pursuing a declaration of nullity that hasn't come yet, or people who are cohabiting without marriage, or even whether that has to do with persons who are same-sex attracted but living in a sexual relationship with someone. In those cases, the church can't bless those kinds of unions. The sort of the one category, because they're irregular up to now, meaning they can be regularized. A couple who are divorced, who were divorced and have remarried, they don't have a declaration of nullity. If they pursue a declaration of nullity, if it can be granted in their case, then their marriage could be convalidated. A couple who's cohabiting without marriage can get married. Those are cases where a union can be convalidated in the church. In the case of a couple of people who are living in a sexual relationship because of a same-sex attraction, that's not the kind of a relationship that can be regularized, that can be made a sacrament. But nonetheless, if they approach the church and ask to be blessed, what this declaration is simply specifying, in a way that's clearer than it was before, is that the church's minister can offer them a blessing. But in that case, the church's minister is offering a blessing of these persons in view of, for example, a growth in faith, a growth in virtue because of God's grace in their life, and with the hope that they continue to move into full communion with the church and so forth. So it's not, the declaration specifies in numerous places, I think I counted 16 different places in the declaration, that it specifies that the church cannot bless illicit unions, but the church can always bless people. Examples of that I've spoken to a number of the priests about, at the end of every Mass, we bless everybody that's there, Catholic, not Catholic, in an irregular marriage or not, same-sex attracted or not. When I go to celebrate Mass at the jail, I bless everybody that's there. I bless anybody that asks me, whether they're Catholic or not, whether they're repentant of the crime that brought them to jail or not. And so the declaration doesn't do what a lot of the headlines have said that it does. And the fact that some people may abuse this lower level spontaneous kind of blessing or use it in ways the church doesn't intend can't keep the church from still trying to reach out to people, to offer them whatever it can. And so the hope is that, in fact, this ability to offer spontaneous blessings of mercy over persons, not unions, will nonetheless be of spiritual good to them, spiritual use to them as they strive to continue to grow in their faith. The Pope would like to see a church that accompanies people, that walks along the journey of life with people. Well, this is another way of providing an invitation, is what it amounts to. So I hope that over time, the headlines will fall away as they typically do, and the clarifications and things like the document that we're putting out today to help people understand what the declaration says and doesn't say will help this all to sort of calm down. Mm-hmm. But for now, it's caused quite a stir.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's always commentary and always questions from folks whenever anything comes out like this.
Well, and that's where I was starting with my comments is that, again, how often do we see things in the social media and in the news that are simply incorrect?
That's right.
Yeah.
And yet
All the time.
we still get upset if we see something there that we don't want to see or something. Well, we ought to learn that when we see a headline and it seems not right, it probably will not be right. It probably will be demonstrated later to not be right. So we should calm down and slow down, quit looking at all that stuff and spend more time looking at things that feed our faith.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So we've got a guest today. So Josh, so we know you're the development director at the Newman Center, but turn the pages back a little bit. Tell us about your conversion because you're a recent convert to the faith. So tell us about that.
I grew up here in Tulsa, in West Tulsa and Berry Hill. Actually, there's seminary and Luke Bland. We went to the same high school together. Yeah.
Okay.
And so neither one of us were Catholic growing up, and there really wasn't a Catholic presence at all on that west side of Tulsa. There is now, but there wasn't at the time. And I kind of grew up in a Protestant background, and I was always the status quo churchgoer, me and my family. I felt like we were we're going to go because everybody else goes.
Yeah.
And so I grew up kind of it wasn't my favorite thing to do. Luckily, it was definitely God's blessing that I kind of always had this yearning for something, and I always searched for it within a church community. I got very plugged into some non-denominational churches in college. I had a great freshman roommate, that really encouraged me to let's go find a church together. So it wasn't until later on in life where I kind of, after falling away and just deciding there's got to be more to all this, but I don't know what it is. Later on where I met my now wife, Lindsay, and she invited me to mass. I was a trumpet player, so I had a one mass experience at the time, and it was back at St. Benedict's way back in the day. And I played trumpet at Easter, had no clue what was going on. So you can obviously probably guess my reaction was very much like, oh man, okay,
when is this going to be over?
Go. Yes. I'll go to mass with you. And actually I told her, but I won't become Catholic. That was my reaction to her. And now I always tell people, usually if someone says that, that's the start of their journey to becoming Catholic. And so I went, and it was one of Father Elkin's first weeks, went to Christ the King, and it was great. I was really blessed with the people that were in my life. Got to meet Father Elkin through my wife girlfriend at the time wanted to meet him, and he immediately was like, let me get you connected, and looked around, and at the time wasn't even deacon, but Harrison Garlick was still at Christ the King, and so introduced me to Harrison, and Harrison,
the good deacon.
Yeah. And Harrison actually invited me to a hangout at the church on Tuesday nights. I said it's laid back, it's chill. You can come up there. It's a good place to ask questions. And so I thought I was just going to hang out with some guys, and showed up to RCIA. And I was a little bit...
Which was a hangout.
Yeah, it was a hangout. I was when I walked in, I was like, oh man, there's this weird book, however you say this, catechism. The catechism was there. And anyway, but...
Catechism.
Yeah, I literally looked at it. I was like, I don't know what this is. But I was able to, I sat in that class. Now, I have a music major background, so I know the music history side of the Catholic Church. And back when music was sacred, and it wasn't, in a secular sense, it was considered either demonic or just not against the church. And so I knew kind of the history of that. But sitting through those RCA classes, I was taking it one at a time. I just things just slowly kind of plugged. I didn't have that conversion moment where it was like, oh yes, the light switch flipped on. I felt like it was as if I was in my conversion's like a stadium, but you're screwing the light bulbs in one at a time, and it just slowly everything made sense. And luckily I came in with no major hangups with the Catholic Church, so I was open to anything. And so it just made sense. I think Harrison's such a big part of my faith story. I actually moved to Oklahoma City halfway through RCIA, and he helped me look for a program in Oklahoma City, and And there just wasn't anything that was kind of like right where we were at. And so I actually drove back once a week, and he took me to lunch, and we did one-on-one RCA. And so an opportunity most people don't get, especially now with Harrison. I'm so grateful for that. And so, we got to that point, and my now wife ended up being my sponsor, and it's been great. We've done everything at Christ the King. I actually proposed to her in front of the altar there. We're in the church alone, and got married there. And now we have 2 beautiful kids that have both been baptized there as well. So.
The thing that I like about your story, which is so endemic to campus ministry, and the people in the diocese here know that I spent the majority of my priesthood before coming here as bishop in campus ministry at Texas A&M, very large campus ministry. But it's precisely that we're trying to form in campus ministry is students who, having been turned on themselves, because often we grow up in the faith, but in a very passive way. And at some point in our early adult life, the hope is that something happens that causes us to stop and say, now, wait a minute, do I believe all this stuff? And look at it more different, or look at it from a different angle and realize, yeah, this is true. This is true. Yeah. At which point, with the right direction, catechesis, formation, they understand that all of them can go out and tell other people.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with you. They can invite other people. Hey, come to Mass with me. Let's hang out. And there's a difference between proselytizing people, where we're going out into the world and striving to make people join our team because our team is better than the other team or something. And we're willing to use mind tricks and whatever we, Jedi mind tricks or whatever we have to make them come. Yeah. We want to separate them from things that they're already connected to. There's a difference between that and simply sharing who Jesus is for me, what Jesus has done in my life, where I see the Lord active in my life today. Yeah. If the Holy Spirit is working in another person's heart, those things will ring in a different way than if not. And if they ring in a different way and the person responds, then invite them to something else and see where it goes.
Your story is I think it's a great lesson in evangelization. I mean, in my experience, in my background, working for Focus, being a Focus missionary for 4 years.
Now, a lot of people won't know that. So, Fellowship of Catholic University Students.
Absolutely, yeah. The Fellowship of Catholic University Students, which is a large collegiate outreach of missionaries that we have at the TU Newman Center and at Oklahoma State, our other big campus center here in Tulsa. Who work on the college campus, and they lead Bible studies, do large event outreach, and then do peer-to-peer evangelization via discipleship. And I think that what Deacon Garlick was modeling with you, I think, is exactly that model of peer-to-peer evangelization. Yeah. When folks often tell their story to me, when I hear their conversion story, they talk about an individual or a person who walked with them in their conversion. And it wasn't that, Jedi mind trick. Yeah. It was truly an introduction to the person of Jesus, an introduction to an authentic prayer life, what that looks like, instead of leading them astray or leaving them out, to kind of figure it out on their own. Oftentimes that big group gathering is great to bring people in, to welcome them, to make introductions, but it's the follow-up. It's the individual peer-to-peer work that's so effective. So that's great. So,
well, that's why, campus ministry has been and still is important to me now as a bishop. One of the statistics we used to talk about when we talked to people about campus ministry when I was at Texas A&M was the statistic that, this is going back into the 90s, at that time we were aware that about 90% of Catholic students who were at any university, about 90% of them were at a non-Catholic university. Only about 10% were at a university that is at least nominally Catholic. And of course, not all Catholic universities have a very strong Catholic identity to begin with.
Sure.
And so if 90% of them are at a school other than a Catholic school, it's going to be really important that the church do campus ministry well at state-run or small private, other non-Catholic schools.
Yeah.
And that's where we're really going to make the biggest inroads for the church in terms of disciples who have come out of college sort of oriented, right? In other words, understanding that my life belongs to God and my vocation, what I do with my life, comes from Him and I want to live it for Him. That affects everything about how I get married, how I raise children, everything that you're now doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember when I first started, I got coffee with the Focus team lead at the time, and he sat me down, and another stat he was telling me is like, college ministry is probably one of the most important because 70% of Catholics will actually fall away from, not even Catholics, just people in general will fall away from their faith in college. It's that first opportunity they get in life where they don't have a parent saying, come on, get ready for mass, come on, or get ready for church. And so they'll actually fall away from their faith. And so he actually told me, it's like, get ready. Like we're actually fighting a pretty good fight here. And I was like, so it turned from like a job where I was like, this will be pretty fun. This will be a fun job, to like a passion of mine where I'm like, yes, investing here, like my time, energy, talent, treasure, everything here in the college ministry, I know will then be a version of investing in the future of the diocese. To be future leaders.
But you're doing a particular piece of,
That's right.
campus ministry. And so one of the things that people certainly would not necessarily understand if they had not heard of it is the kinds of categories of campus ministry groups there can be. You guys have recently, St. Philip Neri has recently become a student parish.
Yeah.
Now, there's one level in which any church building that has a bunch of students going to it, people will think of it as a student parish. But this is a more formal designation, a recognition that a parish that was a Newman center, a Newman club. So in the late, 19th century, across the country, named after and for the patron, Cardinal Henry Newman, clubs began to appear, groups of students began to appear at college campuses called Newman clubs, typically. They were Catholic students. Typically, they had a chaplain. Often the chaplain was a priest at a local parish. And the students sometimes had a meeting place, sometimes not. They might meet at the local parish.
Right.
And they would begin to try to grow in their faith while they're going to the university. That's the model that began campus ministry, Catholic campus ministry on these state or non-Catholic campuses. And over the years, some of those schools have become so large and some of those ministries have become large enough and mature enough to be able to stand administratively on their own 2 feet. And then they become student parishes. They have their own pastor, typically.
Yeah.
And they have a staff. They're able to do their own sacraments and record them and so forth. For TU Newman Center, that's new, to be its own, to be a student parish. The diocese, we recognize that it had reached a level of maturity and size that it could do that. But the challenge for all such student-run parishes is that their parishioners don't have jobs yet, typically. They're, quote, poor university students.
That's right.
Now, one
Might
time
get a package of ramen in the basket or something like that.
well, one time they did a survey at A&M and found out there were more cars on campus than students.
Oh, wow.
So students had more than one car, some of them.
Oh, wow.
Poor college students had more than one car, some of them. And so, but it's nonetheless true that a challenge is, how do we fund such a ministry? If it's going to stand on its own 2 feet, how do we fund it? And the funding model involves people like yourself, development professionals.
Yeah.
So you might explain a little about what you do. And
Yeah. So as a development director, actually, I was talking to Derek, and I watched the episode where he was on, and I loved the analogy of like a wire connector and connecting good people with a good ministry. I use that all the time because it's just such a good like model of what it is. But also, I'm a storyteller. I feel like I'm the one being like the missions on campus. So we've got Father Porter, Gerald, the focus missionaries that are all on campus, evangelizing, helping the students, walking in their faith with them. And then they take me to send me off into the community to then tell everyone all the great news that God is doing on campus,
Right.
And to allow them the opportunity to be a mission partner with us, be someone who helps support it financially so that we can continue not only to do what we're doing, but to continue to grow what we're
Right.
doing. And so, yeah.
I mean, the typical Catholic has a number, sometimes a long list, of charities that they support. The nuns running this or that, the fathers doing this shrine or whatever, the local diocese, their parish, other kinds of things. And so the reality is that campus ministries can also be one of those charities that people support. You don't have to be a part of the parish. You don't have to belong to it. You don't have to even go to Mass there. If you have a heart for university students, if you recognize that that's a really important time of life for young people, and you want those young people to be surrounded by an effective ministry that can help guide and form them, then this may well be something you'd be attracted to. The image I used to use at A&M, the one that I went out with myself when I was raising money for a campus ministry, was that I had the keys to a particularly beautiful garden. I held the keys because I was the pastor. And when I would go out and talk to people, I had the image for myself that I was simply inviting them to come and see our garden. And if you like what you see, help us to raise this garden. And people did. They responded.
Yeah, and it really is an act of ministry that you're doing as a development director. It's another piece of it to bring people in, invite them in. I love that. You know, when I first got involved in fundraising, when I was working for Focus and got working for the Archdiocese and then working for here the Diocese of Tulsa, I saw one of those memes, you know, that you see where it's like what everybody thinks I do, what I actually do, you know, and it's a picture of this guy and he's like swinging, he's like the Gatsby's or something, just at parties all the time. It's like what I actually do. It's a guy sitting at his desk sweating, making phone calls, getting ignored all day, licking 20,000 envelopes and stamping envelopes. You know, it's just like, you know, so for you, as far as your day-to-day, your work, you know, how do you balance, you know, staying engaged with the ministry and inviting people in? You know, what is your week-to-week, day-to-day look like?
So, I definitely block out my times around the ministry there because I want to make sure that I think my department can easily fall away, like not be connected with the ministry, but I want to make sure I'm developing this relationships with the students as well. So I like to actually walk with them too and go to the talks that Father Porter does or the class that Gerald's doing. And I like to sit in on some of that stuff, not only to build that relationship, it's also me personally, my own faith journey. But I do have those blocked times where it's like set aside to like, I want to try to meet with as many people as possible. And so I try to hit the phone calls and get out in front of people just to, like I said, share what's happening with St. Philip Neri. And then a lot of the times my doors close and lights off because I'm out in the community. So, and whether that's attending the local, like charitable events. We're just at Theology at the Tower, which is a great event, and it was fun to go out there. Or if it's being in someone's house and getting coffee or whatever. So
People want to hear what's going on. They certainly hear this idea that 70% of young people are falling away from the church or whatever. They may have kids or grandkids who themselves have fallen away, and so they have a concern. You know, there's an anxiety about, well, what's happening? So when they hear of a ministry that's effective in helping kids come and grow in their faith, that's usually very attractive to people.
And it's been great to be a part of. And it is cool to like shine a light on some of those statistics. But then, the best part, though, is when you get to share the stories, those stories you get to hear from the students, the ones that are in seminary, the ones that meet their wife through the Newman Center and are now married, or maybe they're sending us an email 5-6 years later and they're having their first kid. And it's great to stay connected with them.
Sure.
If there's a student at TU who's not as involved or not as engaged and they're hearing this conversation right now, how do they get involved? How do they get engaged? How do they dip their toe in and see what's going on?
So I would say the best thing to do is to come and do a one-on-one sit down with Father Porter. He's so great at like just in personally listening to someone and being very intentional with them.
Sure.
And to find out where they are at in their life, in their life and their faith journey, and what they want, like what do they want out of the Newman Center, and then from there getting them plugged in with the right people. There's going to be a focus missionary or Gerald or a student that's going to spark in his mind that he's gonna be like, you would be great to walk with this person.
Sure.
And I think that would be the best thing, is to get in contact with the office, or just swing by if you're on campus, swing by and meet with Father Porter, and yeah, he would love to meet anybody.
Yeah, and on the other end, if I'm somebody who is a donor or a potential donor, how do I find out more of what's going on? How do I get engaged? What are the practical ways?
Yeah, so definitely give me a call. Shoot me an email. I'd love to get coffee with you or lunch. But yeah, there are tons of ways. Like they said, like time, talent, treasure. There's all sorts of ways that you can support this mission. And so I love to grab coffee with people to get a feel for what is it you're wanting to do, because we do have people that would love to just volunteer their time, or they're retired, or maybe they just have they're blessed with that time and they love to come down and just serve the students. And there are a bunch of different ways to do that.
So if I'm if I'm not a student, am I allowed to go to church at a Newman Center for Mass? Can I step in there? Or?
Oh, it's known by a lot of people around Tulsa that the latest Mass on Sunday.
Yep.
If you've been out of town all day,
Yeah.
you can still catch an 8:00 Mass at the Newman Center. Yeah.
That's right. Especially those lake people, as they're coming back from the lake.
Usually where they're coming from.
That's always a.
But in general, I've met one couple in this diocese. I met a couple, and once a month they go to a different parish that they've not been to somewhere in the diocese.
Nice.
And so I'll see them sometimes out at one of the far-flung rural parishes.
That's fun.
And they're just there because they've never been there.
Yeah.
And this is their Sunday that month that they're going to go out and see.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so, sometimes people will go to a Newman Center. They certainly came to the one that I was at, just because they enjoy the energy of the students. It's a younger vibe, all student parish, or because they're connected. Maybe they're a donor or thinking about being a donor, and they just want to see what's going on. Maybe they have a connection to the university itself, or they themselves are an alumnus. There's all kinds of reasons, but anyone is welcome.
Yeah.
When are your daily Mass liturgies or some of those things?
So
That'd be good.
So our daily Mass, I always tell them we have the pyramid. So Monday noon, Tuesday and Thursday is 5:15, and then 9 p.m. on Wednesday. So those late night people that are maybe they work late, or they just can't sleep. Yeah, 9 p.m. It's candlelight Mass, and it's great. And actually, for the ones you're saying, students that may be listening to this that want to get involved, 9 p.m. Mass is great to come to because it's very popular. Everyone loves the candlelight Mass, but they'll always typically do something afterwards, whether it's ice cream sundaes, or if it's like today, where it feels great outside, like doing s'mores out on the patio. And then Friday we have a noon one as well.
Yeah, we have so many good individual stories of students who have come through. I mean, you mentioned Luke Bland, for example, who's now a seminarian for the diocese. And his time there, he had the Newman Center had a big impact on him.
Yeah.
So it's really an incredible ministry in the diocese.
Well, and we have, we're blessed with two big campus ministries.
Yeah.
TU, of course, is smaller. We also have the one at OSU. And again, it's also a student parish. They've just built a new student center. So again, if you've got a connection to Stillwater or to the university out there, Oklahoma State, that's a great ministry to get behind and help. They're doing great work. Also, the school is 25,000 or so students. So it's a larger population and a larger student center and ministry, and thus has bigger needs. And so we always appreciate people getting behind it. Yeah. It's one of the things that happens in this diocese, because the diocese itself is so rural. Oklahoma as a state is so rural. But our diocese is very rural. We have some parishes that are so small that, if you've got 30 people at Mass on Sunday, that's a crowded Sunday in that parish. And there are people in the diocese who actually support other parishes in the rural area, either because they themselves grew up there and now don't live there anymore, but they know that parish needs the support, or they just have a heart for rural ministry, when we do our annual campaign, many of the ministries that people support in that campaign are serving needs in the rural areas. We also have small parishes, even in Tulsa. I'm thinking too of, we have 2 parishes over in the north part of town, St. Augustine and St. Monica. And St. Monica, for example, is a parish in the north side of town that's going to be having a big mission when in March.
Early March, yeah.
Early March, they're going to have a big parish mission. Well, that's the kind of thing that we like to tell people about because probably most people in town haven't been to St. Monica's before. It's a beautiful church, and the music is amazing. They have a great gospel choir there. St. Augustine, the same thing. Father Celestin over there actually created a soccer league in the back lot of that parish because they have a big old open field in the back lot. And now they run a soccer league for the poor kids, on that side of town. And so it's another example of places that can use additional help. And so people who are looking for charitable things to contribute to, well, even right here at home, we've got lots of them.
That's right.
Yeah. Some of the parishioners in town helped our mission in Heavener remodel a storefront building that they had bought. A group of them helped us rehab a rectory in Holdenville, for example. So those kinds of partnerships, go on between parishes. So.
Great. Well,
awesome.
Thank you for joining us this week on Tulsa Time. My name's Derek Lyssy. This is Bishop Konderla. We hope you have a good rest of your week.
And Merry Christmas.
Yeah.